Welcome everybody. My name is Todd Mitchell. I'm the environmental director at the Swinomish tribe, and the video speaks for itself. But we're embarking on a Camis revitalization project for the Swinomish tribe, and this video talks about our journey along the way, and it's still a journey in progress. So it'll show how far we've gotten so far. But I'll let my co-presenters introduce themselves also. How about Dean, you want to go?
Good morning, everyone. This is Team Dan Jr. I'm a member of the Swinomish tribe in Washington State, working with Todd Mitchell in Department of Environmental Protection for a little over a year now. I'm happy to be here.
Haslahil, my name is Jenna Willup. I'm also Swinomish. I am a curriculum developer and instructor, also with Dean Dan here, and I've been working with the DEP for a little over a year and working with some of these projects that are very close to our heart. Dean.
Yeah, so I just want to do a quick introductions, and then should we just get to the video, Meta?
This is Kukatali Preserve, a park established in 2011 when the property was purchased from private owners by a consortium of granting agencies on behalf of the Swinomish tribe and Washington State Parks. This is the eastern end of the preserve, called Flagstaff Point, where we're installing a fence as part of a traditional food revitalization project. We're trying to protect the fragile habitat and native plants that grow on this part of the preserve. The focus of this project is Camus, a plant with small edible bulbs that was once used by tribal people for food. Here you can see Camus, easily distinguished by its bluish-purple flowers, growing densely in this rocky bald landscape. You can also see a trail running through the middle. This area has been closed to foot traffic for many years, but the trail has still been used by visitors against park rules. The fence is to remind people that this is a fragile habitat and that they shouldn't be entering this area. We discovered this and other trails by looking at drone footage. We could see many trails crisscrossing Flagstaff Point where there should be none. This work at Kukatali is part of our Generations Camus project, started in 2018 by the Swinomish Department of Environmental Protection. We're studying where we have Camus on the reservation to help protect, enhance, and harvest it in the future, and to determine whether we can grow it on reservation farmland. Finding Camus on Flagstaff was a surprise. Very few tribal members have visited here since it was sold into private ownership in the 1920s, and we had no idea it was home to this traditional resource. Once the preserve was brought back into tribal ownership, we were able to conduct natural resource surveys that found this Camus. Another area where we were surprised to find Camus is Martha's Beach on the south side of the reservation. While Camus seems to be doing well here now, that wasn't always the case. This bluff used to be covered in Scotch broom, an invasive species. Kevin Anderson, an environmental management specialist with the Swinomish Department of Environmental Protection, has led this effort.
About 10 years ago, this place was really overrun with Scotch broom and a bit of blackberry. We're standing in one of the areas that's had control for the last 6 years at least, and things are looking pretty good.
Large work crews cut down the weeds that grow up to 8 feet tall and 4 inches in diameter. The stumps are treated with herbicide, which reduces the amount of chemicals needed since it's not broadcast sprayed, and the stems are left in large piles that quickly reduce to mulch.
There's still significant portions of inaccessible populations. One of the things we've done is we've sought this biocontrol agent, a bruchid beetle, a Scotch broom bruchid. Once they get established, they feed on the seeds of the plants, and you can get up to a 90% reduction in seed set, which is really important for Scotch broom, which is a prolific seeder, and its seeds have a long life. You can see there's lots of these little seedlings coming up, and anything we can do to reduce that seed set really helps us with our management of this site long term.
Once the weeds are removed, it's a race to replace them with native plants, like these native jerry oak and junipers. The Camus came back by itself from an existing suppressed population. To talk about the importance of Camus, we caught up with Michael Height and tribal member Dean Dan of the Community Environmental Health Program while they were harvesting Camus in another part of Martha's Beach.
So the Camus today is little known in our community, and yet it was as valuable as salmon in the past as a trades good.
Learning about plants is just one aspect of my education, but it's the vital one that ties me to my community. It also ties me to my ancestors. Being able to harvest this, learn about this, and share about this wonderful plant and this first food is an honor. Is learning how to give back to our community and practice these types of teachings that allow us to identify with our ancestors. It's a very, very cool experience.
We set up Camis digs in South Puget Sound to expand on this experience.
The idea of our trip today was to get a few of us out here from Swinomish to take a look at these Camis prairies and try and actually do some of the practices of actually harvesting Camis.
This is the Mima Mounds natural area in part of the Chehalis Prairie. We contacted Lynn Gleason Hoheisel, the Chehalis Heritage and Cultural Coordinator, to make a land acknowledgement and to learn about Camis.
It is part of a staple from a long time ago that has just been passed down, and not very many people dig and eat Camis anymore. We use it more for the salmon ceremony, and people bring things and share, and Camis is one of them.
Getting down to digging business, we employed traditional ironwood sticks as well as our custom-made cuppins made from old crowbars. The soils of these prairies were developed on sediment left behind by glaciers during the last ice age. Outwash from the glaciers created this gravelly but well-drained soil. The glacial sediments also form the park's namesake mounds that are 8 to 40 feet in diameter and up to 6 feet high. The ground is quite gravelly, giving the metal digging implements the upper hand. Camis is easy to locate by its flower that blooms once the plant is several years old. However, the bulb is at least 6 inches deep, making removal challenging through the rocky subsurface. After testing the various tools, we collected about a handful of Camis each. We spoke with Morris Moe Major with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and formerly with the Washington Department of Natural Resources that manages Mima about tribal access to the area.
I run into a lot of tribal people that this is really important. And I also run into people who manage lands for government agencies who don't always understand that.
Moe advocates to those agencies that tribes have rights to gather on the landscape. These prairies are what they are because tribal ancestors made them that way. Traditional management included burning the prairie to keep trees and shrubs from taking over, while the Camis remains protected underground. This speaks to tribal ancestors' ingenuity and indigenous science methods of landscape management, also echoed by Lynn talking about the indigenous science ways of knowing plants.
I'm amazed how our ancestors learned how to cook things that you don't know if it's good or poisonous.
Our next stop was down the road at the Glacial Heritage Preserve owned by Thurston County and managed by the Center for Natural Lands Management. Sarah Hammond, a restoration ecologist, talked with us about the need for reintroducing not just fire, but also Camis harvesting to the landscape to maintain the ancient practices that have kept the prairies beautiful and productive places.
We started reintroducing fire. It's really used to help kind of revive the native plant community, remove some of the thatch and moss that has built up over the last 150, 200 years since it was last burned. And then it gives an opportunity for really great seed soil contact for reintroduction of some of the native plants that have been lost.
This area also used to be covered in extensive Scotch broom that has taken decades to control using many methods of removal, including burning, pulling, and herbicides. Now it is covered with native plants, including Camis. The beautiful weather and gorgeous views made it easy to enjoy digging the plentiful Camis. Sarah continues about harvesting as a management tool.
With the harvesting, I think there's a great opportunity to think about ways to reintroduce that disturbance in a way that's actually beneficial for the tribes and beneficial for the land.
After digging for a few hours, we reflected on our experiences of the day.
Wonderful experience. Our son, he's never done this before, and he's usually not into these types of events where we go out and harvest wild things. He mentioned to me it's kind of like clam digging, but it's not as hard. after about 5 or 10 extractions, he really started to take off, and it was 1-2 pulls and he was pulling out a bulb. So it was good stuff. It was great to see him be able to access his intuition in that manner.
I didn't know anything until it was about 5 years ago when my girls and I were at Chehalis going for a dinner at their community center, and there's this field just full, packed full of them. We were just like, what is that? It's so awesome. So we pull off into this dirt driveway and just walk through it. We were just in awe. And we show him pictures, and he's like, you were in a field of Camas. I'm like, I have no idea what it is. I had never heard of it, didn't know what it was until just recently.
We've been here just over an hour or so.
A couple hours.
It went on to be, and it took that long to gather this much, and it feels really great to take part in reviving this traditional gathering, harvesting process as it is, and to see how much labor it's going to take to really accumulate, say, just a roaster pan full. You can imagine it's going to take digging for hours to accumulate enough for a good feast.
First of all, just having tribal members here that can share about their experience and go back and tell others what they experienced here. And I think that everyone's enthusiasm, that's going to rub off on others, hopefully. And it was just really great to see people out digging. And I love especially seeing the youth, like Dean's son in particular was so excited to dig Camus, and I feel like that's really what this is all about. And then we got to experiment with all of these different digging sticks. So, we got to experiment with technology and see what might work well for different sites up at Swinomish.
I like digging, so it's fun. I mean, get my hands dirty.
Starting point for us to kind of get on the ground and dig up some bulbs to figure out what that method is, test out some methods with some different digging implements to figure out how they work and how they don't work, so we can kind of carry that knowledge forward. But I think some of the takeaways too is being able to get my family out here and getting them sitting down on the ground and digging in the dirt and picking some bulbs and getting them familiar with the process kind of early on. Hopefully get more of our youth and get more of our community involved in this.
We returned to Swinomish with just a handful of Camas each, but more importantly, with valuable new information about how Camas grows, its habitat, and how to dig it. Cleaned of dirt and the dark outer skin, the white bulbs are revealed, which we will freeze for later test cooking. We will continue studies on the potential for growing a variety of Camas on Swinomish farmland. Though it may be a while until we can serve a good meal with Swinomish-grown Camas, we hope our efforts will start the process of the community relearning about this important first food. Our next stop for our Camas Generations project was Fourth Corner Nursery in Bellingham, Washington. Tribal members Dean Dan Jr. and Todd Mitchell visited the nursery to learn about Fourth Corner's Camas growing techniques and to help harvest some bulbs for our clam bake.
We do bare root production everywhere else on the farm, so we were using that same system for our Camas and bulb production. Camas, like all the other crops we do, we start from seed. It's sown in the fall. We add compost, lightly cover it. It germinates in the spring. Being a spring bulb, it's basically done growing by June. So this is probably like a 3-year. This is probably like a 2-year-old. Yeah. There's a great size. Here's a great size one Dean just found. This is a nice one.
How old do you say that one would be?
Probably at least 4 years old.
4, okay.
Yeah.
We returned to our lab with our 100 Camas bulbs and began cleaning them of their dark outer layer in preparation for cooking. A short soak in water, as well as some forceps, helps with the process. The largest of the bulbs is the size of a golf ball. Cooking the Camas requires 24 to 48 hours to convert the indigestible starch called inulin into sweet fructose. Dean used a crock pot that cooks at a constant 200 degrees Fahrenheit. As the transformation happens, the Camas slowly changes color from pearly white to a dark brown. With the Camis done, we headed down to Lone Tree Point where the annual clam bake is held. The clams are cooked in the traditional manner by steam cooking on the beach. Our Swinomish elder, Chester Caillou, and his family have overseen the clam pit for the last many years of this gathering. After 20 to 30 minutes, the cooking is done. Our honored elders at the beach are given seats of honor and their first taste of the cooked clams. The main tent is filled with the gathered community where a traditional blessing in our native language is given. We only had a small amount of Camis available, so we set up a table with Camis and other traditional foods available for those who were interested in getting just a taste. Some of those who tried it were DEP staff, and we caught up with them later to ask what they thought of it.
The taste was pretty good, as I recall, and a bit caramelized. It's been described as like a baked pear, that and sweet potato.
Kind of sweet, and it was very soft textured, very starchy kind of feeling. It reminded me a lot of like fingerling potatoes or sweet potatoes even, because they were almost as sweet as that. It was the first time that I tried it, so I look forward to trying it again.
It reminded me of sweet potato. It was starchy, but at the same time, it was sweet. By utilizing our first foods, we are acknowledging our relationship in our existence in this world, loving Mother Earth and praying to Father Sky, and that our foods and our spirit and our wellness will be replenished upon consumption of these foods.
Our next site visit is the Mitchell's house near the Swinomish Reservation, where they have been growing Camis in their garden as seed stock. The leaves come out in March, the flower buds form in April, bluish-purple blooms come in May, and then seed pods form and are ready by June. All the stems are cut and stored to dry over the summer, yielding about a cup of seeds each year. In February, we brought seeds to the Skagit River System Cooperative, or SRSC, Nursery in Burlington, Washington, to see their propagation process.
Camas seeds need cold scarification to germinate. They wait for it to be cold and wet for several months, and then that tells them, okay, spring is here, it's getting warm, it's time to germinate. We plant the seeds in these trays, and we actually leave them in here for 2 years.
Right. How many seeds was that, or how many bulbs do you think we'll get out of that?
Well, between 700 and 1,000. And cover it up.
When they're 2 years old, we put them into pots. The seeds that you saw Jim pulling out were 2 years old. These ones are like 3 and 4 years old.
Oh yeah. How many are right here?
And about 4,500. And then at about 5 years old, they've finally been starting to flower. So that one's like 5 going on 6 years old.
Nice.
SRSC is propagating about 35,000 bulbs to be ready in the fall of 2020 for transplanting into our Camis test plots on the Swinomish Reservation. Back on the Swinomish Reservation, a short hike takes us to Flagstaff Point on the western portion of Kukatali Preserve. We're here to learn about botanical monitoring efforts at Kukatali from botanist Aaron Colclasure of Hamer Environmental. For the past 2 years, in the month of May, Aaron has been monitoring Camis for the tribe.
The monitoring on this island is to look at recreational impacts to Camis versus non-recreation. So you can kind of see along this white tape line that there's a very small trail that runs along the island. So we're monitoring across the trail, and then we're doing adjacent plots to look at Camis to see recreation versus non-recreational impacts. So I'm using a 1 meter square quadrat for each of my measures. Once I've set up, I'm going to identify the plant species composition. I've just documented how much percent cover of the Camis is within each quadrant, using these flags to kind of make my life a little bit easier, and divide it into 4 quadrants, and then I'll add them together to get my Camis percent total. And then the next thing I'm going to do is measure Camis heights. I'm going to go to the first Camis plant that is in flower, and I'm going to measure the tallest point of the plant, so that includes the leaves and the fruits or the flowers if it's in bloom. I will also do photo point monitoring of each plot as I go, and then some overview shots that we can compare to different years of surveys.
After completing 3 years of data collection and analysis, we hope to report on the impact of non-authorized trail use and make further management decisions protecting Camas and the associated fragile habitat on Flagstaff Point. We will also use the data to develop a demonstration harvest plan for tribal high school students as part of our Between Two Worlds Indigenous science class. Our next task takes us to the eastern part of the reservation, to the Swinomish farmland called the Flats by tribal members. Here we are preparing our Camas test plots for bulb planting in the fall and winter. We chose 3 locations for plots, marking out areas about 100 feet by 50 feet, or 32 meters by 16 meters. Each plot has a different moisture regime to test Camas growth in wet conditions, moderate or mesic conditions, and dry conditions.
If you look at the grass that's growing in this area, there isn't any reed canary grass. So it strikes me that this area stays wet enough that we shouldn't have a problem dealing with reed canary grass, which is going to be, a major barrier to successfully growing Camas here in the Egglands.
The plots also have varying levels of existing grassy cover crops growing on them, requiring control before we can plant. Our method is to mow them down, then solarize the plots, letting the sun bake the weeds and grass over the hot summer.
We laid down the black plastic as you see here. As you can see, it's a fairly large plot, so it took a little bit of time. This is a part of the process where it's kind of a waiting game because we have to wait for the transition season to come so that our Camas can be planted in order for them to go dormant for the winter season. So our next step is that we're going to come in, we'll take some soil samples and we'll till this area up, create a soft surface, and then we'll start to measure out where we're going to start to plant our 36,000 Camas bulbs.
The bulbs will go into individual plots composed of 2 parts. One half will be planted in Camassia lechlinii, Greater Camas, and the other half in Camassia quamash, Common Camas. We plan to begin planting by mid-fall to ensure the bulbs have plenty of cold stratification time over the winter.
All right, there we go. Hope you all enjoyed that. I think we were done a little bit ahead of schedule, so yeah, let me know what to do next. I guess we can take questions from the people online right now in the Zoom. If anybody's got any questions or comments.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Todd and Dean and Jen. We really appreciate you being able to be here and present that amazing film. And as Nita mentioned before, we are going to have all of these recordings and films available for viewing after the session is over. So we are a little early, and I would like to give the opportunity for Jen. Would you like to do any follow-up to the film since we have some time?
Well, we have been kind of implementing this program in a lot of different ways with our programs at Swinomish. It's not just the DEP that's working on this, although it is the DEP that's kind of spearheading this program and getting kind of delegating the work throughout the tribe. Speaking for myself and my experiences, I am an instructor for our Between Two Worlds Indigenous Science program. We teach our high school students during the school year And last year we got to do a unit with Camus in our restoration project where we took our students out to replant some of the images that you saw in that video, where we took some of the 1- and 2-year seedlings and replanted them so they had a little bit more space to grow. Our students got a chance to go out and do a lot of those bulbs, and it was really fun to have them get their hands dirty and experience that. We're also taking them out to the Camas fields this spring, you know, with the whole COVID thing. Hopefully that will be over. So they will have an opportunity to get some actual hands-on experience with seeing what Camas looks like in the field, when it's ready to harvest, what the bulbs look like. And then we're going to be doing kind of like an Indigenous Iron Chef, where Dean and I are going to be cooking the Camas in several different methods and having the students do kind of like a taste test to see what they like. Because that is definitely a goal of ours, is to get the Camas into community palettes, you know, on all of our community dinners, stuff at like the blessing of the fleet and our first salmon ceremony, things like that, our clam bakes. Todd, Dean, do you guys want to take over?
This generation's Camus project, for me, is another way of how members of the community can learn to give back to their community, whether it's through culture or through education. For me right now, it's education. I've been a fisherman my entire life, so my entire livelihood revolved around culture and knowing those teachings. Well, now, you know, I get to transition all of that intuition and all of that that will and that beautiful spirit over into generating avenues of education for our youth. And when we talk about Camus and our Between Two Worlds Indigenous science curriculum, we mention it where it's at and why we value it. It's honored in our stories. It's honored in our language. It's honored everywhere. So for me, instituting this pathway of food sovereignty and cultural awareness is very key in moving forward for our youth, especially in our Indigenous communities. If our kids are allowed to go out and explore nature, and they're able to indigenize nature through their teachings of their family, and then also acknowledge the science that comes along with their education, they're going to be able to move mountains in the future. So that's our hope, and I hope that we can reach that goal here soon.
These programs are kind of the fruition of many years of work. I've been working for my tribe, Swinomish, here for 20 years. And early on, I saw the need for education for our youth to have an idea about science and the availability of schooling for science to hopefully eventually go on in science for college and come back and work for us. And it's only in the last few years where we've been able to staff up to the point of thinking of those things. So Jen and Dean are new to the department last year to specifically work on our Between Two Worlds Indigenous Science class. And really to, you know, think about how we get that education to our next generation of youth. And the Camus project is along those lines also of finally being able to, you know, after many years of catch up of, you know, doing regular water quality type things and other environmental work, we're able to expand out in these areas where, you know, we have, you know, additional benefits to the community. So this was a great product to think about, especially with our ability to actually know that we actually have Camus growing on our reservation. After you know, that knowledge had been lost for many generations, and the practice is lost also. Camas in our area used to be grown in cultivated plots by our ancestors, and those were the first areas that were turned into conventional farming when the settlers came in So all that was lost really early on. So being able to bring this back is a great way to educate ourselves, educate our youth, to hopefully be able to carry on those traditions. And traditions as we actually relearn them. So when we're out there digging things, it's like we have no idea how to dig these things up, but I guess, you know, you kind of dig in the ground and they come up eventually. But I think, you know, as we saw early on in the video, to get our own kids out there too. So, you know, if we don't do it often, and it's pretty much once a year type thing, they have the ability to remember those kind of things. And hopefully when we have more Camus available, to have it more often, and get it back into regular use. So like I said, you know, this was kind of a work in progress. So we hopefully have more parts to this video as it comes along, to really chronicle, you know, how things are coming along. And putting this together is like kind of a last minute thing of, you know, we're starting this off, and I should probably chronicle this somehow to get it into video. So hopefully it comes off well, and after I dust off my rusty film skills from way back in college, to kind of document this in a way that's accessible to you know, everybody that uses YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed that, and I will post more parts as they come along. I think our next part will be when we're actually planting Camus in the fall. And then there probably won't be much activity until next spring, when we actually start to see these molds come up and start implementing our weed management work. So yeah, so I thank you all for watching that, and yeah, if anybody's got questions, send it along to us via Facebook or Instagram at Swinomish DEP, and yeah, hopefully we'll keep people apprised of where our project goes from here.
Thank you guys again. That was wonderful. We really appreciate you being here, and please enjoy the rest of your day and be safe out there.